And with that, I'd like to invite some special great guests that we've got to talk through their experience in upgrading. We have from one of our great customers, Ionis, Mohsin Chowki, who is the Director of Information Technology there. And also we have from one of our really good partners, Tech Systems, Kevin Shull, who's the CEO of Tech Systems. And they're here to join us to talk through their experiences along the way of the upgrade journey that they undertook together. So welcome, Mohsin, and welcome, Kevin. I'd just like to start with yourself, Mohsin. Can you just tell us a bit about how Ionis Pharmaceuticals and the role in workflow automation that you play inside of the business?
Yeah, absolutely. So Ionis Pharmaceuticals is a RNA therapeutics biopharmaceutical company based out of Carlsbad, California. And we leverage Nintex for our workflows, all kinds of workflows. But one of the main one, or one of the more complex one, is to protect our external communication or publications as they leave the company. So any publication towards presentations or abstracts or medical journals is being managed through the Nintex workflow to ensure that the information that's being relayed in those communications are protected. Meaning, once a user submits a publication request, it gets routed for approvals depending on what areas of our technology touches on, what drug is it related on, or what phase the drug is currently under in our clinic. So every year about 2,000 publication gets processed, and as a result, we get about 30 reviews, so about 60,000 approval tasks per year using NWC.
Well, that's really cool to hear stuff around that and get a bit of an insight on how you're using it. And then just yourself, Kevin, I just want to ask from that, as a partner, you've been working with Ionis for quite a while now, and I was wondering if you could just tell us a bit about what necessitated the upgrade project that was undertaken.
Yeah, of course. I mean, as Mohsin had highlighted, I mean, this is such a critical process. And we know that the Microsoft workflow engine, which Ionis uses as part of this solution, is expected to be deprecated at some point in the future. So we basically use this as an opportunity, working closely with Nintex, to basically facilitate the upgrade to NWC. We felt like it was the right time, and it really puts Ionis in a great position, essentially future-proofs them and gives them an early footprint into NWC.
Yeah, it's nice to see that getting ahead of the curve before it becomes a problem of being ahead of the game. And then just yourself again, Kevin, just around that, what sort of steps did you take in the upgrade program and process that you could just elaborate a bit on to the audience?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, essentially, the first thing that we do is we conduct an analysis of the workflows. So we went through O365 and determined what processes were critical or what flows were critical to this process. So we knew that there was 4 main workflows. We identified 8 administrative workflows. And in this review, we basically determined, what do these workflows do? How do they start? What basically triggers them? What systems are they connected to? How do they talk? And then ultimately we get an output. And from there, one of the first things that we look at, or one of the main things we look at, is because we're moving to a new modern architecture, is there a more efficient way to build this, on this more modern architecture? So we basically design that process flow, and then essentially we're ready to run the upgrade tool. And then from there, we do run the Nintex upgrade tool. And it kind of helps us establish a baseline. It really helps us save a ton of time. It builds out the overall architecture. It's got some of the workflow logic in there. It's got variable lists, which are important, and also more from a technical perspective, but it also carries all the logging configurations that we can use for future technical troubleshooting. Again, saves us a ton of time. And then really from there, what we do is we basically go through and we update all the API configurations. And so we did this based on the modern architecture. A good example is going from XML to JSON. JSON, obviously far more efficient, much better coding language. We do some things like we update the web service calls to be variable. This is kind of interesting. It's a best practice, but it basically allows us to leverage the old workflow, but also be able to leverage the new workflow, and they can kind of toggle back and forth as we're doing testing. So it's just a good practice there. We reconnect all the systems using the NWC built-in connectors, so all the kind of the out of the box connectors, if you will, determine if there's any downstream changes or impacts that we need to be aware of. And then from there, we basically start to test the workflows. We compare it to the workflow that existed previously. We're looking for completeness of action. Are all business requirements met? Complete forms, the look and feel right. And then, we just help, Mohsin and the team, through testing, UAT, go live.
Yeah, and that's brilliant to then hear all the leveraging of all the modern capability that's there and how you actually glue that to really give more capability. But to both yourselves, Kevin and Mohsin, and I've got to ask the question but did you consider any other options when you're in the process of doing this and evaluating? And if so, why were those not used in the end? Can you just elaborate a bit upon that?
Yeah, maybe I can start with that one. As far as Ionis Pharmaceutical is concerned, when we first started looking at automating some of our workflows, we looked at various solutions. Flow was one of them, now called Power Automate, obviously. K2, I think, was another system that we looked at the time. I think it was acquired by Nintex now. But of all the tools we looked into at the time, some of them were more limited than others. But really, we were able to narrow down on Nintex just because of what it could afford us as far as customizing our workflows and not being boxed into a specific way of doing things. So it gave us a lot of flexibility, and also it was very capable for managing our workflows. So that was really our main reason for finishing with Nintex. We still now Power Automate is maturing, is becoming more capable, of course, but still Nintex affords us the flexibility of not only orchestrating our workflows, but for example, keeping the end user experience very native to the platform that they're working on. One big requirement for us when we were creating our workflows is to keep our end users in one central location to approve their workflows. That's not possible today with Power Automate, but Nintex give us that flexibility when we leverage SharePoint lists and keeping the tasks and approvals within that. That itself has us really sold on the platform and the functionality of Nintex.
Yeah, and I agree with Mohsin. I mean, what's really interesting is that, this in theory could be built in Power Automate, but it's really not designed within Power Automate to be done efficiently. Like we estimated on our end that it would be 2 to 3 times the development time, the maintenance time would increase. There were some limitations also that we would have to, significant limitations that we would have to work around. There's a 30-day workflow life limitation. Essentially a non-starter for this, where a workflow could die and essentially halt the process. And really in general, complex processes are not ideal to kind of develop within Power Automate. Like as an example, in this specific example, we had multiple approvers whose identities are determined dynamically. If those approvers change, there's certain tasks that need to be closed out, other ones that need to be created. There's a series of nested loops for like approvals and reviewers and things like that. And really even just the simple administrative things like rechecking the workflow, rechecking to see if anything has changed. So number of reasons, but yeah, we definitely chose Nintex.
And then just Mohsin, back to yourself. I just wanted to ask, also dive a bit more. I know we've gone through a lot of the technical pieces here around, but also can you talk a bit more to the business impact and results that were gained through going through this effort, and expand on those a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the direct business result is that Ionis public information is well protected once it goes through these workflows. It ensures that the right entities approve the communications as they leave the organization. Secondly, our resources, our internal resources, are allowed to focus on customization and application development. So, we get to focus on the UX part of things, the integration on the back end, on the Azure stack, and also the databases that are behind these workflows, because we have millions and millions of compounds that are selected as part of the workflow through Nintex and so on. And our internal resources get to focus on developing and making sure our database are in top shape to be handled by the workflow. So that for us in itself is a big win. Just being able to leverage our resources to do more with fewer resources, and really that would not be possible without Nintex workflow. And when it comes to NWC, we're starting to notice huge performance increases in processing these workflows. So I don't have the right metrics, but it's a big difference from Nintex for SharePoint 365. So our workflows are being processed much faster. There is better centralized administration panel where you can go in and see the state of affairs of all your workflows, all your tasks, all the errors, all in one place. So as far as using fewer resources and doing more as an organization, that's really what we're noticing with NWC.
Wow, that's really great to hear. And I guess what I'd like to just to both yourself, Kevin and Mohsin, just to kind of wrap up on this, the last big question that I've got, that'd be great. Is there any lessons that you can impart onto the audience that you've taken away from this that you'd like that you can share back to them?
Sure. I can start, Kevin, if you don't mind.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, really the lessons learned here is to make sure you have the right partner in place when performing the upgrade. Really working with image text systems has allowed us to not worry much about upgrading to NWC. Their expertise was really demonstrated in upgrading this complex workflow and addressing all the bottlenecks that were discovered, and all the improvements and efficiencies in adopting these new technologies, moving away from XML translation and utilizing more of JSON, leveraging some of the new capabilities of the platform when it comes to calling items from the source and using variables and so on. They really made the process much smoother. They helped with the testing, and ultimately we were quicker to upgrade our complex workflow.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. Thank you so much, Mohsin. And I would just say, I mean, really from my end, I think getting your footprint established early is puts you in a really great position. I mean, I think not only do you get the performance improvement from being on a modern architecture, but it also enables you to kind of get some of those things out of the way, like establishing your system integrations. So even if it's a simple workflow, you can take a huge step just by setting up the kind of the infrastructure, and obviously you'll be in a much better position for future processes down the road.
You are invited to visit our program page at nintex.com/upgrade for more information and to get started with your upgrade into Nintex Workflow Cloud. Thank you, and we look forward to seeing you getting more and more value from Nintex.